Welcome everyone again. My name is Tommy Saunders. I'm the Southeast Regional Extension Associate for the Produce Safety Alliance. Um, I want to be the first to welcome you to today's Produce Safety Alliance Annual Trainers and Lead Trainers Update. This is a webinar that we started a few years ago, just to, again, give a platform to provide updates from the PSA, as well as some FDA updates and anything in the produce safety world. I do want to start off with a few reminders before we do get started because we have a pretty packed schedule today. All participants are muted. There'll be plenty of times for questions and discussions throughout the meeting, as well as hopefully some at the end there. So we do encourage you to please use that Q&A or the chat or the raise your hand function, and we can unmute you manually. With that, the PSA trainers that aren't presenting at the time will be able to notify either the presenter to address your question, or we can answer it back in the chat or the Q&A. This session will be recorded, and the presentations will be shared via the listserv as well as on our PSA website after the call. So if you miss anything or have to step away for a moment, don't worry, everything will be recorded. We also will be sharing a lot of links or a lot of resources today. Don't worry about frantically writing those down. We have a great resource for you that will be shared with you in this list that you'll be able to access all those resources as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Betsy.
Thanks, Tommy. Welcome, everyone. I love this agenda slide. Every time I see it, it makes me laugh because I'll even laugh right now because it's got so many bullet points. Time is the most valuable commodity we all have. So what I can tell you is we've spent a lot of time trying to make these slides concise and a good use of your time. We welcome you to throw questions in the chat box or any other way you want to communicate with us if there are any questions. Otherwise, we're going to keep this moving and give you the information. There are several places in the presentation where we are going to stop and pointedly ask for your input. I also want to thank the PSA team for being ready and queued up because everybody's going to take a little bit of time to present so that you don't have to listen to one set of voices or one voice for the whole time. Next slide, please, Tommy. This slide is in here just to give you all an idea of what we think about when we think about PSA priorities. And these priorities are really linked together, but these are really what drive us. As the team gets smaller and our priorities start to sort of narrow and focus, I always keep these in mind when we're creating objectives and trying to move forward. So the first priority is to ensure packers, growers, regulatory and inspection personnel, extension educators, and others have access to accurate, high-quality training to meet the PSR requirements. Certainly 11222C being the primary one we always talk about, but really it has to do with all of our educational materials and extension materials. Anything we put out is really focused on accuracy and high quality. The next one is supporting PSA trainers, which is what we're doing today, with professional development, mentoring, and information so that you all can actively engage in PSA grower trainings and respond to questions. I know there's always some concerns about policies, and you hear from us if things aren't going so well, but we value you all more than you possibly can understand. Well, I shouldn't say that. Maybe you do understand how much we value, but we put a lot of time into it. And we talk about what we can do internally to support trainers as much as we can. For instance, to that is recently those of you that have been offering the new revised 5.1, you've been filling out a survey, which we appreciate. And the reason we're doing this is to try and see how things are going and if there's anything we can do to help you. The next one is to build and maintain effective relationships and networks to understand needs, evolving research, and changing industry practices so that we can nimbly develop new materials, keep constituents informed, and keep the implementation of produce safety and practices moving forward. This is really what we do with the educators' calls and with the groups we belong to and the advisory groups we serve on, really is maintaining those relationships so that we know what's going on and we can step in to address any concerns. I think for us, we understand how diverse this community is, and we understand that everybody has something to contribute to moving produce safety forward. It is our efforts that go into trying to make sure we are maintaining and building relationships so that we have an inclusive environment where all these valuable voices can work together to collectively move things forward. All right, next slide, Tommy. This is Lori now.
Okay, so hello. I think I want to present all this information for those that really like the metrics and the numbering systems as far as where we're at, as far as trainers and train the trainer courses. So overall, between September 26 to September of 2020, 2016 to September 2024, we have more than 98,000 grower training participants, which also means that we need to reach a lot of people when we start looking at Subpart E updates. So other than that, we have over 3,800 Train the Trainer participants as well. The Train the Trainer courses and grower training courses continue to grow every time these reports come out. As far as the domestic, we have 304 lead trainers, and international 233 lead trainers, which is great. It's good to see some international growth there. The grower training courses are continuing both remote, online, and in person. So as far as the domestic, we have over 57,000 grower participants and international 40,000, which makes that 98,262. Next slide. So of course you've seen this one before, I'm sure, this map, but this is the Nationwide Produce Safety Alliance Grower Training Course participants, both for all of the in-person, remote, and online deliveries based on state or where you're at in the United States. And again, it continues to grow. I remember when this map first came out and the numbers were only in the double digits. We are now also in the 3 and 4 digit areas. So it's good to see growth in those areas. Just a reminder that PSA does release an extensive quarterly report on training metrics, if you're interested in that, including these types of maps and figures of course distributions. If you're doing any type of grant reporting, this type of information or these metrics can really benefit you. Okay. If you are interested in joining the training report distribution list, you can sign up at the PSA website under training reports. This slide is just showing you the increase in the amount of national and international trainings that we've had. It slowly tends to increase. I think the most recent one we've had is in China, where in June of 2024, we had 38. And right now at this point, we have about 66. So we are continuing to reach out internationally. Next one. Okay, as far as the PSA data sharing policy, just a little bit of an update. The reports are produced to include the state, county, and breakdown of the courses and participants. Of course, the most recent that we have is September 30th of 2024, so the next one will be coming out shortly. The PSA and AFDO do not share contact information for course attendees or evaluation reports with anyone but the lead trainer and or trainers involved in the course. And that's an important distinction. We get a lot of calls sometimes from individuals that saying, can you give me a list of participants? And we really do not share that information unless it's to that lead trainer or trainer. Okay. Excuse me. There are prior reports that you can request via email if you would like. Because of the accessibility policies at Cornell, we cannot post the entire PDF report, but you can sign up to be on the email distribution when reports are available. Again, that will be under the Produce Safety Alliance, under Training Produce Safety Course and Trainer Reports, if you're interested. Next one. And then we have the PSA Trainer Directory. If you haven't been in there for a while, there's been a few changes. So this is just a reminder that this directory only includes trainers who want to be listed publicly. There are some individuals that go through the training process that do not want to be listed, and there may be reasons why you can't find them in that case. So there is an active trainer column that has been active. In this active trainer column that you see over on the right, the yes indicates that the person listed has participated in a trainer course, in a PSA training course within the past 2 years. So they are active and they have been training within that last 2 years. This active trainer column was added after collaborators complained about the difficulty of finding a trainer on the directory who are actively training, going in, finding someone that you can connect with and realizing that they're no longer training themselves. So this is a good resource for you to use as needed. Okay, next one. And I believe it's Yuli.
Yes, thank you, Laurie. And now we're going to review some updates on information released by the Food and Drug Administration. The first item is the inflation-adjusted values for the produce sales and the total food sales. As we all know, it is important that all PSA trainers to be aware of these values, which are updated every year, so that you can update your teaching notes for the PSA grower trainings. The produce safety threshold, which determines if a farm is covered, is at 31,925, excuse me. And the total food safety average, which is used to evaluate a farm qualified exemption eligibility, is at 638,941. And just as a reminder, business size class cutoffs are not inflation adjusted. Next slide, please. Traceability continues to be an important topic, and the compliance for all covered operations is on January 20, 2026. Traceability has its own rule, and it's not part of the produce safety rule. However, the Produce Safety Alliance has developed a supplemental slide set on the traceability rule as it relates to produce growers. This slide set could be added to Module 7 and is available on our website. We remain engaged on all the discussions that are happening. We are actively engaging and participating in multi-industry groups, and we expect to develop more materials related to traceability within the next year. Next slide, please. Hopefully by now you all have heard about the changes that happened on May of this year related to the pre-harvest agricultural water requirements. You can follow the QR that is displayed on the screen to access the revised Subpart E published by the FDA. One of the big changes is the shift from testing as the primary metric for decision-making to an agricultural water assessment intended to look at the whole production system, including agricultural water, crop characteristics, environmental conditions, and risk posed by adjacent and nearby land uses. The expectation is that each grower understands their water quality and how their water management practices minimize risks to the crops they grow. Additionally, growers should be prepared to explain those decisions during an inspectional visit. You will learn later in this presentation from all the resources that have been updated, developed as they relate to the delivery of Module 5.1 and agricultural water for pre-harvest activity in general. Next slide. Of course, the changes of Subpart E resulted in changes in the compliance date for pre-harvest agricultural water, and this table shows the new dates. For all other businesses, the compliance date is April 7, 2025, while for small business and very small business, the compliance dates are April 2026 and 2027, respectively. Next. This slide is just a reminder about the enforcement dates for post-harvest agricultural water, which already started on January 2023 and 2024 for all other business class and small businesses, and will become effective next year for very small businesses. So now we can continue the conversation with Davis, who will talk about some resources. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, now I'm going to be talking about resources, and as already Julie mentioned, the great event so far this year for us has been the release or the publication of the new Subpart E by FDA in May of this year, and we released the revised Module 5.1 in June of this year. That included the PowerPoint presentation of this revised Module 5.1, plus its supplemental PDF handout with teaching notes. Important to mention, in these teaching notes, instructors, like most of you, will find a lot of additional details, including helpful preamble comments outlining the FDA's logic behind some of the requirements found in this new Subpart E. Very important, we as a trainer, that we really understand that messaging in order to convey a most appropriate message for our growers. We know that this all is new for them. If you have not done it yet, we encourage you to download this updated presentation with its supplemental handout from our website. If you are planning to use this presentation in your future courses, remember to share this supplemental handout with the participants of your courses. So it's important, it's not just presenting or delivering this presentation, but also make sure your growers have the resource for future, for looking for future information, because they might not remember the exact details of all the information shared during that presentation. For anybody who might be interested also, this presentation with its supplemental handouts can be ordered for commercial printing from our Cornell library. It's worth mentioning that the revised Module 5.1 also is available in Spanish and Chinese. Korean Portuguese translation have not been updated yet. Now that we start talking about the revised pre-harvest agricultural water requirements, I would like to highlight that we will not talk about this topic in great detail during this presentation today, because so many of you already heard several presentations about this topic already. So this is something that we wanted to clarify. Next slide, please. Yeah, and we're not going to delve too much into this topic, agricultural water, or the Subpart E, because remember, we offered 2 educators called webinars in June, one in English and another in Spanish, to present and discuss the revised Module 5.1 presentation in detail. We did it to support you, PSA trainers, in the process of learning and adjusting to the changes in Subpart E of the Product Safety Rule. We simultaneously updated the Train the Trainer office hours recording available in the Resource tab in our website in both English and Spanish, and we also updated the Product Safety Alliance Train the Trainer Critical Concepts document, also found in our website in both languages, English and Spanish. These are resources that are available to support you at all moments in case you need to reinforce your understanding about this new Subpart E. In this moment, we're updating all the resources that all resources, everything related with Subpart E information. In this way, any of our resources with revision dates before May 2024 might not have the most updated information regarding the Subpart E. Therefore, it's important that you check the revision dates of all our resources containing agricultural water Subpart information. Now I'm talking about this part. I will pause and encourage you to post any question regarding the delivery of Module 5.1 and the resources that we have been sharing so far. And I'm going to remind you that we're working in updating all resources that we published in the past, and we're also developing new material right now. But as always, we're open to hear from you. What are the things that you haven't encountered with growers that have been the thing that have been more challenging regarding the delivery of this Module 5.1, revised Module 5.1. Next slide, please. Now we talk about our efforts concerning the 98,000 growers training participants who have attended our courses prior or before the release of this revised Subpart E. We're in the process of scheduling remote revised Module 5.1 training for them. This session will take approximately 2 hours for the delivery in real time of the revised Module 5.1 presentation and to address any question regarding these new Subpart E requirements. This session will be purposely scheduled to be available to all U.S. time zones, all the way from the west in Hawaii, Alaska, to the east, to Puerto Rico and the East Coast of the United States. So we're going to be trying to, be available for everybody. We will start with 10 initial sessions in December, 6 is gonna be in English, and 4 are gonna be in Spanish. Additionally, we will record a video of this presentation to make this revised module 5.1 accessible to all interested participants 24/7 on our website. Next slide, please. These are some of the resources that we are developing to further support all participants who have attended our courses prior to the release or revised Subpart E. First, as you can see in the first part of the slide, record keeping regarding the agricultural water system inspection and the agricultural water assessment that we know have a lot of growers have a lot of questions regarding these particular requirements. The other thing that you can see over there, we're developing new materials to support understanding and implementation, the understanding and implementation using more real-life scenarios with images and videos. Also, we're developing flowcharts and fact sheets. Next slide, please. In this slide, we want to remind all of you that you have access to important training resources such as the PowerPoint presentations of all grower training modules in English, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Portuguese version 1.2. The trainer update page, you can access also the upcoming and past trainer updates webinars and all the resources that we have been sharing in those webinars, and the updated checklist for registering, planning, and hosting in-person and remote grower training courses. Important to mention, all these materials are available in English and Spanish. Next slide, please. Also, besides our resources and tools, remember that a lot of extension, university extension along United States are working on developing resources, but also the FDA. The FDA also have developed and published a good amount of resources regarding the finalized Subpart E. If you want, use this QR code, direct link, to access these different resources that FDA have been published for you. So, and here we just mentioned 5 of them, but there are more over there. Next slide, please. Here I would like to mention that our Product Safety Educators Group webinars in both Spanish and English. Remember that you do not need to be a PSA trainer to attend, and it's open to all people interested in product safety. All past recordings of these presentations are available on our websites, and I would argue that these webinars are an ever-evolving resource and therefore always a relevant source of information regarding product safety. And this is because we are constantly using your questions, your input, your ideas, your interests to choose the topics and presenters to try to fill any potential gaps of information or understanding of any topic related to product safety. The very good news is that with new funding available, we're expected to increase the number of these webinars in the coming months. Therefore, I will remind you to share anything that you would be interested to see in these Educators Call webinars in the chat. So that is going to give us some new ideas, some new ways to develop this future Educators Call. Feel free, if you are not registered, sign up for these ones, feel free to use the red QR code to the left to sign up for the PSA Educators Call in English, or if you prefer the one in Spanish, use the black QR code to the right to sign up for Educators Call in Spanish. Most of the time they cover the same topic, but sometimes we also differ because our attendance, our public is different sometimes. It's different between the Spanish and the English part. And with that, I will hand over to my colleague Don Stockel.
Yeah. I'm pleased that you remembered who was next. Thanks, Davis. So from the main page at the PSA website, you can go under resources, and that gives you access to both the general resource listing that's geared toward growers and the trainer resources that has additional resources and documents for you, your trainers, and your growers. As a trainer, some of those additional resources that you will want to include is how to set up a grower training course, some teaching tools and supplemental tools like module activities to incorporate into your trainings and make them a bit more interactive and engaging. Next slide, please. The more than words illustrations is one of those sets of documents that is available for the trainers under trainer resources and also on the sidebar under general resources, I believe. The more than words illustrations are really helpful to break up words heavy trainings, whether they're PSA grower training courses or other food safety trainings. The concepts are pretty broadly applicable to a wide variety of food safety trainings. The series is now complete, and that series of more than words illustrations is available in 2 languages, Spanish and English. Next slide, please. This one is kind of a meta resource. It's linked from the general resources page under water, where a grower or a packer might look for it. It's a basic listing of fact sheets and guidance listed by line according to the regulatory requirements for post-harvest water. Please be aware that we've just said that we're currently updating many of our resources. This particular resource still uses the 2015 wording and numbering system from the produce safety rule. The regulatory requirements for post-harvest water and the resources that support it have not changed in substance, but those numbers and some of the specific words have changed. And so that is on the list of resources to update to the 2024 numbering system with the revised wording. We plan to make a similar compilation to this that will bring forward many of the guidances and other resources for pre-harvest water in the near future. So stay tuned for that. Next slide, please. Here's one we're particularly proud of, and it's a heavily used resource, the PSA Sanitizer Tool, which is a compilation of EPA-labeled sanitizer products. The main purpose this tool was created for in 2017 was to help a grower or a packer find sanitizers that are labeled for fruit and vegetable washing. The list also includes sanitizers that are labeled for non-porous food contact surfaces, and more recently, irrigation water, since as of this week, there are now 2 products that are labeled for treatment of irrigation water. As you look at the PSA sanitizers list, you see 4 sections that are all accessible from the same page in this updated version that we created that is posted as a web app. They're color-coded, and moving from left to right, there's the product name, the active ingredient, the EPA registration details, and then other product information. Let's go to the next slide for a little bit more information about that. When the old Excel tool was updated to create this more sleek web-hosted database, thanks to Rob Way, we hosted a focus group that helps to guide improvements. One issue that the focus group participants brought up was examples where an EPA master label alone might lead a grower to use the product in an off-label manner because the product label doesn't include all the possible uses allowed under the EPA master label. The product label is the label that the manufacturer puts on the bottle. The master label is a registration vehicle that says all the possible uses for a sanitizer product, such as food contact surfaces or washing fruits and vegetables. Sometimes the product label only contains one specific use, like washing fruits and vegetables, even if the master label has both labeled uses. The product label is the legal enforceable label, and the content of that product label, always within the bounds of the master label, can be what will be in that product label is a marketing decision by the company. The new tool includes the product labels so that there's a more accurate description of labeled uses for each sanitizer product. And we've also done a few things like simplifying the active ingredients, adding some hover over descriptions of each column to provide additional details, and linking to the manufacturer's contact page when there is one available. Let's go to the next slide and talk about the PSA online grower training course. This is another resource that got launched this year, the Spanish language delivery of the online PSA grower training course. The Spanish language extension associates did a great job adapting the language of the course, and together we've updated both language versions of the course to include revised Module 5.1, which was a real push this summer. We added in new quizzes and new discussion questions and revised 5.1 into the online course as it exists now. One thing you'll notice on this slide is that the registration for the Spanish language course is less costly than for the English language course. If you have a Wayback Machine you can use or a good memory, you might remember that when we launched the online PSA grower training course in English, there was a low introductory cost of $125. For equal treatment and equal access, we opted to offer the Spanish language version at the same reduced registration cost while it gets started up, while the course launches, just like we did for the English version. These courses are often offered monthly. There's a registration cap of 15 participants, and we schedule as many as we can. They're not always offered monthly. We pace them to meet the demand for the course. And with that, I think that's a great segue for Mariana to bring us into more information about the Spanish language efforts at PSA.
Thank you, Don. Well, in the particular Spanish language specific deliverables that we have done this year, we continue to work on any PSA materials that we produce, and we have made a big effort into releasing any material that we have, either an update or a new material in Spanish and English at the same time. We keep maintaining the PSA website in Spanish. I think that's a great resource for anyone who wants to consult on the resources. It is entirely, or we try to make it entirely equal to the English website. We have also created some novel materials. One of them is this project led by Laura and Julie, by the great idea of Davis having this product safety rule preamble translated. And for those of you who have read through it, it's a big document that was translated and revised and reviewed several times until we were able to release it. I think it's a great resource for anyone who wants to learn more about the product safety rule. So I will encourage anyone who is wanting to learn more about how this rule was created and why some of the requirements are there, why they were selected as they are, to read through the preamble in Spanish. We also have translated a lot of the documents from the revised Subpart E, and also the Subpart E itself, the regulation and the requirements for Subpart E has been translated to Spanish. We continue to work on the topics that some of our stakeholders have asked us to continue doing outreach about through the Spanish Educator Group. I think this group continues to grow. We have seen a lot of good attendance on these meetings that we try to schedule frequently. And also we have continued to support professional development. And one of the things that we have continued to do is to participate in different international conferences. For example, in this case, we went and participated in the IFP at Long Beach, California this year. We talked about the importance of outreach to Spanish speaker growers and farm workers, this with a focus to ensure food safety for the US consumer. So this was a great roundtable for us. We had great speakers. We are thankful for our great relationships that we have with our partners. And it was great to see familiar faces there. So we will try to continue participating in these or other conferences to continue doing this outreach in Spanish or for Spanish speaker communities. Next, please. Again, for our other efforts that we've done here in PSA related to Spanish language, we hosted several domestic PSA grower trainings and trained the trainer in Spanish. We have always tried to collaborate with different organizations, different departments of ag, other regional extension personnel, because this is a coordinated effort. We need to know where these needs are in Spanish. We like to mentor, we like to co-train, and we like to be in contact with these different organizations. We don't have the funds to completely cover, for example, manuals or certificates for the participants. And some of the grants or some of the organizations do, but they do not have probably the human capacity of having lead trainers to participate. So we are able to do that. We continue to participate in this way. And I think it's a great team effort within the country to expand and to develop better experiences and expertise in our trainers. So thank you for that collaboration. In the case of the international efforts that we have done, since 2022, we have had a heavy compromise or a heavy responsibility with international communities. As some of you know, we have participated in international summits this year. We hosted several grower trainings. We had some train the trainer. Most of these train the trainers we've done remotely because we want to reach as much of the regions as we can. So, and some of my colleagues also participated in an OFRR training. This year we went to Mexico, Dominican Republic, Guatemala, Honduras, different countries, different products, professionals from different areas and different industries. So I think it's a great way to continue developing, as we said, capacity building, right? This is our emphasis, and this is what we want to continue doing. We cannot do it alone. We need our PSA trainers, and we need our PSA trainers to be updated to give a high quality course, so to be able to organize and deliver a great course for the growers, for any participants in the grower trainings. Again, we dedicate ourselves to mentoring, and we dedicate ourselves to expand on experiences. And this was a great experience, and another international effort that we've done this year was to participate in 2 remote grower trainings courses. We did this with China participants. It was a great experience for those instructors that were involved in this, the trainers. It was great to be able to deliver this with a simultaneous translator. These are efforts that we continue to explore. So again, we could relate much more with those of you who have hosted alternative delivery language, right? Grower trainings. So now we know we were able to collect a lot of feedback, and we had a few hot wash meetings where we could see how could we improve and how could we support those trainers that have to deliver in different languages, in other languages that are not as common as we do in the regular basis. So a great effort. Next, please. And now let's stop. I know you've heard a lot of information. There's a few messages in the chat. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to verbally answer any of those questions that are there in the chat or in the Q&A. But please, if not, if you have hold your questions, do it now. Do we have any questions that you have so far? And please just start typing them in the chat. Okay.
Mariana, there's a lot of chat going on about being able to offer the 5.1 update as a standalone and whether or not we're going to offer a certificate. This was a big topic of conversation with the team this week, and just to be fully transparent, we're trying to figure out how we would do that and keep track of it. The one thing I think that has come out of the chat is having a certificate would be valuable. So maybe we can create a draft so that it looks uniform, that maybe the PSA trainers could use. I think that's one thing that has come out of that. I think the other thing we're really trying to figure out is if you all are offering the revised 5.1, we would love to figure out a way to keep track of that effort so we know how many people we think we've reached. And I'm not entirely sure how we might do that, but I'm curious if people would be willing to share. I know private information's, we don't share private information, but we would like to keep track of the numbers at least. So that's now running through my head. Just to summarize what's going on in the chat box, but I'll stop talking. Are there any other questions?
Betsy, because so many questions in the chat have had to do with re-education or follow-up education, there was one suggestion for emailing people the revised 5.1 plus notes. There were other suggestions where various training teams are thinking to take it on for themselves, and then we're talking about PSA's efforts to do so in a organized and keep track of who has been retrained. Do you have thoughts on best paths forward for training teams attending this meeting?
Okay, well, that's a lot. So here's what I think. One, we are trying to reach the 98,000 people that have already taken it. I am assuming, as Michelle Danilic was quick to point out at the very beginning, it's probably not actually 98,000. There's probably some duplicates. I don't think there's 40,000 duplicates, but I could be wrong, right? So I think there's probably some duplicates, probably not. I don't know how many. We might actually try to figure that out. Next, I think there are folks that are no longer working in produce safety, so they're probably not going to be reachable or want to be reachable because the information is no longer of value to them. They've retired or they've moved to different professions. So when it comes to the folks that are interested, Don, which is I think what your question is, of reaching people, you all know who you've trained. You have their contact information. Relationships are important, and it might come better from you than from the PSA at large. We will be reaching out to them with the emails we've been given. As Michelle Humiston can tell you, emails change, right? So some of ours may not be as productive. I really do like the idea of trying to figure out how to capture your all's effort so that we can cumulatively say there's been this much effort put into reaching folks. I see some information coming in about a Qualtrics survey, and these are all really great comments. So those are things we're going to take into account. Is there an interest of us making a uniform certificate of attendance? So everybody is sort of handing out the same one, and then you could put your name at the bottom if you're the PSA lead trainer, or is there an interest in that? Oh, I see a thumbs up.
Yeah,
Okay.
thumbs up. Search are good. Yes, yes. A lot of positivity in the chat.
Okay, so that's something we can definitely work on. And I think that would be good. And also the heck yes, go ahead, Chip. I think there's also the Qualtrics, and coming up with a way to gather your input also sounds like it has some legs. Okay.
Betsy, can we reiterate and make sure I don't say anything wrong that there, as far as we know, there is no requirement to be retrained. You still meet 11222C based on the training that you have had, but it seems like an extremely good idea to know what the current regulation says.
Yeah, okay, great question or a great point. To our knowledge, there is no requirement by FDA to growers have to attend the revised 5.1 to our knowledge. What I would say is what Don said, which is that we all know the original 5.1 looks nothing like the revised 5.1. So that's why we are putting so much effort into trying to reach those 98,000 growers, because I have definitely bumped into people who are like still working on their MWQP, and we need them to recognize that that's not the requirement. So yeah.
So that one was a direct response to Annie Sen. Stephanie Lozano's wants to confirm that there were no changes to post-harvest water. Testing is still required.
Yes, that's true, but post-harvest water, when you start looking at provisions, you're gonna get tripped up. So some of those provision numbers have changed, and as Don and I found out during a recent conversation, a few of the words have changed too. So you may want to just brush up on the new one that is out for 5.2.
Annalisa makes the suggestion that we have a Qualtrics survey to collect information from states without, so.
Yep, that's what I already said. I saw that
Okay.
in there, and yep,
Great.
we will talk about doing that. Thanks, Don. Anything else? You're great at reading these up.
I do not see anything about, other than Christina's most recent new question. Is there an option to reach out to states, get a list of covered farms and contacts?
I think you can ask. That is not something PSA will be involved in. So
I think we can also try to target the Q&A. Do we expect that the course participant numbers in the US will level out as the vast majority of produce farms take the grower training that satisfy the requirements?
Do we think they'll level out? Trainings have been a real interesting thing in that people are taking them more than once. I don't have that crystal ball.
But we are observing that there's retake in many states because growers recognize that they don't remember what they learned 5 years ago. So mission accomplished. We've already trained 98,000 people. Seems like a maybe that's an optimistic statement because people still need refreshers, and they are continuing to take the course with turnover and for that reason.
Yeah, and Michelle Danilick just put in the chat box that some audit schemes require it annually. And so that is driving people. Which brings you to the question about the duplicates. All right, we're going to take a look at the duplicates. We'll put that on the list to see if we can figure that out. That's a great point.
That is complicated. Even I think it's harder even in Spanish, for example, because some people have two last names and two first name. Well, first and middle name. So sometimes they use one or the other.
Yeah,
that makes us think that it's two people when it's the same. So
and we recently encountered someone whose name was misspelled years ago. So
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mike, I see that you've trained hundreds of people, which is why we're gonna give it a swat to retrain them through our efforts. But I know there's other people who are going to offer these in the winter, so that is a great.
Yeah, I think they were asking how many people in Chinese we train. I think it was around 60 into remote trainings.
Annalisa asking about a series of office hours to help with 5-1 refreshers and the GTs. We did offer a 5-1 refresher that is recorded, and that's in the links. But if you think it would be valuable, do you guys think it would be valuable to host a few office hours to go over that? Because now that it's getting real, we might be able to pull something like that together. Okay, I'm seeing some yeses. All right, we'll see what we can do on that front. This is the kind of stuff we need to know.
They're two separate topics. The one was international farms using sanitizer, and I can just put that in the chat if you'd like, rather than.
No, go ahead and answer it now. It's a question.
Yeah, so Michael asks about whether a non-US farm is required to use an EPA labeled sanitizer. And I'm going to do a little bit of a dance on this response because we want to make sure we get the regulatory requirements right. FDA requires that sanitizers that are used or any other treatment, the method of treatment must be accompanied with scientific data or other information that the method of treatment is effective, and the treatment must be monitored to ensure the conditions are maintained. So that doesn't say anything about EPA, but EPA regulation is an example that FDA gives. In the US, the reason this is so relevant in the US is that EPA has jurisdiction over any use of antimicrobial pesticides for this use. So if a farm in the US chooses to use a sanitizer for treatment, they do have to follow the EPA regulations. Outside of the United States, we've been working with FDA to very clearly describe the language and the expectations for international farms. We do know that EPA does not have jurisdiction over the use of antimicrobial sanitizers, in other words, pesticides, in other words, sanitizers, outside the US, as long as the relevant import restrictions are met and any local regulations are followed. So it's a long way of saying the strict language of the rule does not require the use of an EPA labeled sanitizer outside of the United States, but there may be other factors at play. Is there anything more to say about that, Betsy?
Nope, that's exactly where I wanted it tap danced.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then Joey was asking about international trainings and whether anyone on the group who is thinking about going into that alternative language delivery would be able to attend something that we do to see how it's done. One way to do it well is what I'm interpreting Joey to be saying.
Yeah, well, I read that domestic farmers attending international trainings because of language. I see several things that we could coordinate and do, but also complicated things. So when we do an international training, we try to always focus on the region, the product, what they're doing there, their particular needs to the region or the country. Even if they speak the same Spanish, it's not the same products that they're producing in Spain and Honduras, right? Or the US. We have been able to do that in the past. With these Chinese trainings that we did, for example, we didn't have all the resources to do this, so that, for example, the simultaneous translation was not covered by PSA, which is probably one of the hardest push on budgeting for these courses. So those are the two things that I see that might not work out. Also, the time, right? The time zones. are hard on us. We had to train very late for China to be up in the morning with the training, and that would be also complicated to try to match more time zones into one training.
But we are planning on the update that we're planning on doing, we are spreading these updates over a 12-hour period. And the purpose for doing that is to make sure that different time zones have access to training at different times. So for the update, we do that. When we do individual trainings, as Mariana mentioned, we do try to be a little bit more targeted. I also want to repeat, because I just want to be sure Yuli mentioned also that if you're using antimicrobial pesticides, sanitizers, you have to follow local regulations as well. So don't just be thinking about the import impacts, but certainly being aware of domestic rules. Yes, yay. Yes, Joey, we did not forget Hawaii and Alaska, and we will make sure you guys have a chance to take it while you're normally awake. That is why we're spreading it over those periods of time. Okay. I think we're good for now. Oh, I do want to say Kristen Woods offered that she had looked at duplicates and almost got it up to 30% of duplicates. I think it was in Alabama. And so there is a chance that we do have fairly significant duplicates. So we will try to look at that. All right.
Do you want to just confirm that we have no information about pre-harvest water guidance coming from FDA?
We have no, we don't know anything.
Okay. So sorry, Chip.
Yep. Okay, let's jump back in, shall we?
Yep.
Yeah, just really quick, Norm, about anyone that is one-off inquiry, you can send it to any of us. We will try to match them with the training that is available for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thank you, Mariana.
Thank you, Tommy.
And importantly, share the need with FDA if there are places that need it, because they have different groups that are focused on different prevention plans, and that may rise to the priority list for FDA. Okay, sorry, Tommy, take it away.
No, great addition there. All right, as we move into our next section, we're going to revisit a few policies that we've kind of mentioned through the slides before, but also just hit on some main PSA policies that we want to reiterate that many of you may be well aware of, but they do have importance, and we are still seeing a few issues with some of them. First off, being clear when you're marketing your courses. It's critically important that trainers and your course organizers use the correct terminology that we've set when advertising and promoting the PSA grower trainings. This is really to help our participants clearly understand the type of course that they're registering for. I know it sounds pretty straightforward, but just to briefly go over them again, when we talk about a remote course, that's that course led in real time by instructors, but delivered over that video conferencing. I know it's very easy to say we're online. Obviously, that's kind of ingrained in our head, but really when we're going that marketing, making sure that we use that correct terminology to, again, not create any confusion with our growers and participants, so we don't have to deal with that in the back end. In person, again, that traditional in-person course. Something to be clear with here, though, is making sure that we recognize, are we doing a one-day course? Are we marketing for a multi-day course in consecutive days? Consecutive weeks, just making sure that that marketing is clear at that registration page. And lastly, we talked a little bit about the online course, and then the stipulations with that delivery being that more intensive 3-week at their own pace course. But again, not making sure that our growers don't think that they're signing up for a remote course, but they've really signed up for the online course or vice versa. And we do say this again, just because we know a lot of you as trainers, as well as ourselves, do participate in other food safety training courses as well, whether it's GAPS or another course. So making sure that when a grower signs up for our PSA grower training, they know exactly what they're getting, what the requirement is for them to attend, and get that certificate of completion. Staying on the course side of things, I want to go into course registration and delivery a little bit. The requirements there set in our policies being that the courses are registered at least 2 weeks prior to or in advance. And this provides after that necessary time to generate registration paperwork, so make sure that the course is set up within the database, Retroactive registration itself is not accepted unless all that paperwork can be presented, including PSA evaluations, course documentation, proof of a PSA lead trainer and the trainer attendance. And that is subject to a $250 administration fee. If training dates change, and this is, a big take-home message from this slide, make sure that you contact AFTO. Do that ahead of time to update that course registration, because that's going to not only impact your course ID, but also impact the evaluation that's specific to that course. Again, goes without saying, and we've talked about it a lot, but pre-recorded presentations are not allowed in PSA grower trainings. Another take home from this slide here, and I know I'll hit on it again because we're about to talk about evaluations, but evaluations and final agendas with trainer names per module must be submitted to the PSA either by mail or uploading in those scans. And this is with that course approval email from AFTO that includes the mailing addresses and the hyperlink for those scans. Getting into evaluations here. And I know we've said it ad nauseum, but we still have some problems occasionally. And I know a mix-up's easy, and it's not too hard to navigate there. But a large mix-up or misunderstanding of our policy can create a large headache for you as a trainer, and us on the back end here. Do not reuse PSA grower training course evaluations. That evaluation code is unique to each specific course. And this is included with the paper evaluations for your in-person course, as well as that Qualtrics URL that you receive for a remote course. You can mail paper evaluations or submit trainer scans folder, but we do have a big ask of please do not use CamScan or CamScanner app when you are doing those submissions there. Make time for participants to complete evaluations. I know in our trainings, we all have different modalities, different ways that we kind of carry out the course and throughout the day. But a big thing that we found helpful at the PSA, I know a lot of you have as well, is for remote trainings, be sure to share that Qualtrics link throughout the training. Remind them not to hit submit at the end or before they're finished with it, of course, but making sure that, I know after I present a module, usually one of my teammates already has that eval link in the chat ready to go, just so someone can get started on it at that time. With that Qualtrics link, reminding them that it does save their progress as they go, as long as they don't use a different device later or log in with a different device or clear their cookies or website history, that kind of thing during the day, or if it's, a multi-day course throughout that time period. For in-person trainings, again, another great way is to remind them to fill it out throughout the day, whether that be after modules are presented, throughout breaks, and then turn it in before leaving. I know a lot of us, it's kind of that ticket to exit the room when you're in an in-person course, which is a great method, but just making sure that we are giving our participants time for those evaluations. They're well aware ahead of the end of the course that they have to fill out an evaluation, or we'd like them to fill out that evaluation before they leave. As you wrap up your courses, make sure, again, that trainer names are correct and complete when closing out the PSA grower training. This is especially important on when a PSA trainer, lead trainer's names change between that registration time and the teaching of course. It's not a problem that it's changed. It's just we need record of that. That record has to be sent back then. You can change instructors. You just, again, need that record of final trainers. So we are well aware of the PSA as you're going through the evaluation, who taught what, as well, just to make sure. And you can see an example picture there in the bottom corner. Really easy to update again. Just make sure that you are sending those back at the conclusion of the course. When submitting those course evaluations, including that course agenda with the name of the trainer each module is key. If they're not submitted, we will be reaching out to those lead trainers. I know a few of you have probably gotten those emails because sometimes they get lost in the mail, or if it's not connected to the email that you think you sent back, but making sure that that is included is key there. I'm saying this because we have noticed an issue with this. So we were reaching out to AFTO to make sure that they ask for this as well. And we're letting them know that we need it since we noticed that it's not always coming back to us. Further PSA policy reminders, again, regarding manuals here, the printed PSA grower training manual versus the electronic PSA grower training manual. With the printed PSA grower training manual, we know that a printed PSA grower training manual is required for an in-person and remote PSA grower training, and that's required of every person in that course. Participants must have that printed manual prior to the start of the course, or they're not eligible for the training certificate. So this is really on us as trainers and lead trainers to make this well known before the course starts. If a participant shows up without them, they need to be aware and that they would not receive that certificate at the end of the course. It might be a method where you can move them forward into another course at another later date where they obviously already have their manual. But again, it's on us as lead trainers and trainers to verify that they have that manual present, because they don't, again, are eligible for that training certificate. Excuse me. If participants don't have manuals, we will follow up with the PSA lead trainers on record. And you note there that it says trainers. We'll reiterate it again in lead trainer responsibilities in the next slide, but I think it's key to hit here. I might be the lead trainer of a course, but every other trainer who is also a lead trainer is responsible for this. So everybody will be notified and is responsible for making sure that these policy requirements are met in each training. As far as electronic PSA grower training manual, it's available for download as a resource. It may not be used as a substitute for printed manual for an in-person remote or for an in-person or remote course. I just again want to reiterate why we're bringing this back up, and to remind you that when trainers do not follow this policy and can end up getting their trainer status revoked. It's an unfortunate side of the job, but it's not something that hasn't happened. And again, we want to make sure that we're very transparent with this policy. Everybody is well aware of it, and make sure that it's very understood here. So again, important to add as we're going through the remainder of our policies. Your PSA lead trainer, you have some additional responsibilities there. PSA lead trainers are responsible for, again, ensuring that all paperwork is completed and returned to AFTO after the course concludes. Even if it's another individual's responsibility or organization has been set aside to assist with that course follow-up, it reflects on the PSA lead trainer or trainers of that training if not all of these things are followed, and they will be held responsible for those errors or failures. And again, this is where I mentioned it before, it's all PSA lead trainers who are part of that course. You'll be held responsible and subject again to potential trainer status suspension or even revoking for the course policies are not followed. A few updates with the grower training manual. And I know we sent updates throughout the year when this occurred, but we want to make sure that it's all in one place here. The cost of the PSA grower training manual has increased. It's been an increase from $50 to $60, and this is simply reflecting the rising printing costs that have occurred since COVID or been increasing since COVID. In addition, the addition of the supplemental revised module 5.1, which is a 64-page booklet containing slide notes and the new PSR pre-harvest water codified pages. PDF files for commercial printing of PSA's grower training manual V12 and V12A do include that revised module 5.1 and minor changes in the front cover and the tabs and the 5.1 learning objectives. And that's available again, like Mariana mentioned previously, in English and Spanish. We are asking printers to download and use the complete set of the new files there. So when printing that V12, V12A of the PSA grower training manual. PSA trainers can continue to use the printed V12, excuse me, V1.2 PSA grower training manuals. We do ask that our trainers print or email the handout of those revised module 5.1 slides so that participants have the updated materials for note taking. Again, we've all been in courses where the slides don't exactly match the notes we have. So we want to make sure that we're making this transition as easy as possible for our grower participants. It is important to note that once that PSA stock of V1.2 runs out, we'll be printing V1.2-V1.2A of the PSA grower training manual. So that manual will then incorporate that revised module 5.1. This is not a perfect fix. We get it. It's not, it's kind of a band-aid at the moment here, because there are things that haven't been incorporated or haven't changed that may have changed, such as those provision numbers that we've talked about in some cases, or content in other modules needs to be updated. But this is, better than expecting PSA trainers to photocopy and hand out a PDF each course. The PSA Grower Training Manual interactive PDF has also been updated, and again in English and Spanish as of July of this year. It's been said, it'll be said again, obviously a big focus on the PSA will begin to work on that PSA Grower Training Manual V2 in the coming year, and that's a big push for us there. I did want to mention the price, or from mentioning the pricing in the previous slide, as well as we're going to get into certificate costs here. We're mentioning the pricing because we are finding that some people are overpaying for international courses. This might not be as relevant for our English trainers here, but we want to make it very clear the set prices that the PSA has for those materials and AFTO have for that certificate of completion. So it's understood from us as trainers, but also our growers, what the set prices are. We do understand that there's other prices that incur with trainings, but we just want to be transparent with our pricing. As we kind of get to the end of our policy talk here, mentioning again the importance of that AFTO PSA certificate and that completion cost. The cost of the AFTO PSA certificate is offered at a tiered price structure. And I know we've mentioned this before, but certificates are $35 for participants from high income countries and $15 for participants from other income countries. And this is based on that World Bank designation. We have that link available for you if you're interested in looking at that as well. But the intent here is to make that certificate cost more equitable. This is the responsibility of the PSA lead trainer of each course to determine, the correct cost for your participants and for that course. And finally, re-mentioning the alternate language policy, and Mariana discussed this a little bit in her last few slides there. But we just want the ins and outs of the alternate language policy to be understood. And if you have any questions or who to reach out to and how to find out more about it. But this is the intent for those serving growers that need PSA grower training courses in a language that isn't currently available, or for those that are limited literacy. This is in place to help address language barriers by making this curriculum and training wider, or available to that wider audience. I will say this takes a lot of planning. I know some of our trainers on this call have taken advantage of the alternate language policy. It's been very successful, but I know the planning was a deeper dive than it does to just, continue to do a grower training that we've all been traditionally doing in the past. So make sure that those organizational efforts are accounted for. You have the team to kind of back you up with that. And then again, understanding the policy and the ins and outs there. So we have the policy linked. You'll get that link as well and where to find it. And if you do have any additional questions, please reach out to anybody on the PSA team, or more specifically Donna. But any of us can get you the resources you need. So if someone's not available, hitting up the next person in line is great as well. And since we have been talking a lot, we do want to take the time to have another feedback break here. So a chance to unmute and chat, or hit up the chat. I can see a number in the chat, so I'll ask my fellow trainers to help me address any of those questions as well. But do you need any policy clarifications to start off with?
Tommy, I'll start with just one of the side chats, which was to make sure that if we give an update training for revised 5.1, we're comfortable, or we're very clear that this doesn't substitute for a certificate of completion. It does not fully meet requirements of 112.22C.
Yep. Yeah, I would say that's a great thing. As I know apart from 5.1, some trader or a lot of our trainers use other content, but just fully understanding that when we're marketing any course, that our participants are understanding what they're getting there. So,
and if we do offer a certificate for revised 5.1, we would be very clear about that on the certificate.
yes. Thank you, Don.
I do want to ask, are there any questions about policies or clarifications to policies? Tommy did a great job of being the dad of the hour, since this is probably the least fun section to deliver. But we do still run into problems, so we just wanted to go back over policies, especially where we're seeing trouble, or people having misunderstanding of policy. So if there are any questions about policy, let us know.
Yeah.
I do want to say that if you are offering 5.1, there is a PDF file of the slides and the notes that you can send the growers. You can buy it from the bookstore, or you can send them a PDF of those notes that they could print out and put in their manual, that's updated. So there was a discussion about, do we send them the slides? No, you don't send them the slides. You send them that document that has the notes in it. Because that's the most valuable part.
And Betsy, there was also a conversation about sending the PowerPoints, which are editable, compared with sending the PDFs, which are more information only. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, don't send them the PowerPoints. Send them the document that's laid out to look like the manual that they have, so that they have all of that information. That's available to all of you, and you can share that with the growers. Okay.
Do you want to focus on policy now, or do you want to tackle Robert's question about reaching groups, specifically plain growers, that the technical legalistic jargon just doesn't work for education?
Okay, I didn't necessarily see that, so I'll dig for it.
It's in the Q&A. It's in the Q&A.
Oh, it's in the Q&A. That's where the problem is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I think the thing about regulatory language is a challenge to navigate, but I think we have to be very careful about fully abandoning the regulatory language altogether, because especially if it's something that the growers need to understand what the words mean so that they can communicate effectively with inspectors. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges in extension, is using our words effectively to help the growers understand this is what it says, this is what it means, and here's the actions that need to be done to meet those expectations. My general feeling is that, and I know you asked about Amish and Mennonite, growers are savvy. They have to deal with difficult technical terms all the time. I think as long as we're defining it for them and being clear and taking the time, I think the biggest problem, or the biggest challenge, not problem, is the time it takes to do it. And it's hard to do that in a 7-hour grower training. So I respect that difficulty, but I don't think we can abandon the language of the regulation, especially if they're subject to it. It's different if they're not subject to the regulation. Then I think we can use different words. But if they're subject to the regulation, I think you gotta hit those terms and make it clear. Other thoughts from the team? That's my own opinion.
I think the glossary helps, and maybe if we could develop and expand the glossary for particular needs of different groups. Using the resources for the modern words, I think mostly the teaching notes are very succinct and very small to read, and easy. I'm saying easy to read, to understand some of the requirements of the rule.
Right. I also think, Robert, when you talk about, I think maybe the thing with the Amish and Mennonite is to make them realize what they need to do to be qualified exempt, right? To help them understand how to get out of the requirements if they truly are qualified exempt. So maybe that's where the effort needs to be put. Okay, Any other policy things people want to talk about? I'm gonna move on so we can get out on time, unless somebody, Don, did you want to say something else?
Oh, I just would, Ariel wrote a very thoughtful comment in the webinar chat about how their group managed to achieve high participation in evaluations. So I'll just encourage people to read that if they're having challenges.
Thank you for that. All right. So I did want to give you some funding updates, and this is twofold. One, to thank people for reaching out to their elected officials, for working with their grower organizations. We've gotten a lot of support in the last year, and I want to thank everyone for that support. So currently we are operating on a no-cost extension since July 1 of this year. To say we're running on fumes is about accurate if you're familiar with that term. We do have another cooperative agreement that has come. It's back at FDA with the new budget, and we're hoping that that will arrive. That should get us through August of 2025 with the funds that are allotted. As Tommy mentioned, we will begin V2, a focus on getting a version 2 out. Subpart E outreach is also a high priority, as you've already heard about our plans for additional educational materials, as well as those outreach webinars and workshops. There's specific funds for international capacity building to continue the work in Latin America, and to support domestic Spanish-focused efforts as well, right? So using funds to get the most bang for the buck. And our deliverables are currently being finalized. Again, that information has been submitted to FDA, and we're hoping the funds and the objectives will be returned to us shortly. Next, Tommy. All right. The other thing is that there are still significant concerns about PSA long-term funding. For those of you that are looking at the team, you'll know that we've lost 2 regional positions out in the West. Davis has generously agreed to step into that position, but that means we're pulling him from a lot of SLEA duties into some Western regional things, and that means we're down 2 full people in those positions. It's tough when your funding is year to year. I don't need to tell anybody who's on year to year that, but it's what we anticipate coming next year is not sustainable. So we'll be in the same situation again next year. We do continue to have discussions at the federal, state, and industry level. We're asking again for your support. If you know congressional members, if you have contacts at Farm Bureau, help us advocate. We do have a new 2-pager. If you'd like us to share that, just drop me a note if you need it. Again, I really do appreciate the contacts that have been given to us. We have followed up on them, and we have definitely established good relationships. Last year, we did write several grants to keep us afloat, and this complicates our mission because now we have some grants that have pretty inflexible objectives that need to be delivered on while we're trying to do all these other new objectives, and we don't really have enough money or enough time to bring on more people. So it's definitely not great, but we're going to do the best we can, and I wanted to be transparent about where we're at. Next slide. Beyond PSA activities, this gets to things we're working on besides the PSA. We have Produce Safety Fellows, which is that first cohort in collaboration with the local Food Safety Collaborative. They're pictured in this image on the slide. We are having 2 new cohorts that are going to be part of the Food Safety Outreach Program grant that we got. This is in collaboration with Texas A&M, University of Florida, and Alabama A&M. And that will include a grower training, a train the trainer, and a PSA advanced training, plus network building. So we're very excited about that. These fellows were fantastic. We have a decision support tool that we're trying to wrap up with UVM, Rutgers, and Cornell. We have a consultant certification program, which is through New York. That's so that growers will know if they hire a consultant that they have some background in produce, as we've seen some growers hire consultants that don't have a produce background and they've gotten some bad advice, which is why we even submitted this, because the growers were reaching out to us about this problem. We have another grant about post-harvest water management and traceability with New York. We have one about group gap, and we also have the hydroponic aquaponic project with kneecaps. So those are the other projects we're working on. I did want to spend some time, next slide, Tommy. You all submitted questions, and I did want to put these up here so everybody could see what was submitted. And I did want to go over them to give you some answers and to provide some feedback. Don asked me, why are all these seemingly diverse topics all in orange on this first go round? And all of these questions are essentially things asking us for FDA opinions or for state regulatory opinions. And so I just wanted to say, I can tell you what I think, but a lot of these questions are really not determined by the Produce Safety Alliance. So I want to be clear about that. So how do we know what practices we implement concerning ag water will be acceptable for FSMA and the food safety schemes? Essentially, we don't know because formal guidance isn't out, and people haven't started really inspecting on the pre-harvest certain section of that. So in the meantime, we do know what is in the ag water assessment. We know lots of people, lots of our industry colleagues, academic colleagues are working on helping people define, gathering the science that impacts this. And we do have information to help people start this process. Okay, we do know things that will reduce risks in the systems, and we know how to help people start walking through that. So to me, that's what we need to be doing at this juncture. What does risk assessment on any water system look like under FSMA? Again, that kind of goes to that top question. We know what some of the science tells us. We know how to apply that, and that's what we're going to help growers do with the development of educational materials. In the case of non-compliance, what would be the consequences that a company has to comply with both PSA and PCQI? Okay, there was an article published that Don actually shared earlier that has some idea of what non-compliance could look like. Some of that's going to be at FDA level. Some of that's going to be at the state level. The information that's out now isn't necessarily up to date. So the answer is we can't answer that. You need to look at your state regulatory bodies, or if your state is regulated by FDA, look at FDA as a regulatory body. What is FDA's position on water testing? I understand they are still requesting farmers to test for water 4 times a year. Okay, pre-harvest water is not required to test. I think perhaps what's going on with this question is perhaps looking at the exemption for post-harvest water quality for your pre-harvest water. Maybe that's what you're referring to. The one thing I will say is this: testing water is valuable. Pre-harvest water, even though it's not required, it still will give you valuable information. For post-harvest water, it is required, or you need to meet some other things. You need to make sure you're treating that water with a valid process, in which case you don't have to test, or if you get the water from a municipality that's testing, you don't have to test. But in some instances, you do have to test if it's your well and you want to use that. So hopefully that's clear, but if it's not clear, please put something in the chat box to let me know I'm not helping. Okay. The other one is, has the FSMA PSR resulted in a measurable decrease in foodborne illness outbreaks linked to fresh produce? I don't think this is answerable. First of all, preventing contamination is difficult. Our ability to sense and report outbreaks just continues to go up. So I think that's a hard question to answer. If there are any large brains out there who want to jump in and answer this for us, we would welcome that. Or anybody else on the PSA team. I just think it's very tough. The last time I actually looked at the information a while ago, what I would say is that based on trends, I would think that we were actually having an impact. Because even with the increased reporting and even with the increased surveillance, you're not seeing as big of an increase as you would if we weren't tailing it off. But that's more just my own opinion in looking at trends. And I wouldn't put that in the science, full science category there. All right, next slide, Tommy. You want to get us out on time. PSA trainings. Okay, here's the deal. We have on the schedule, we did it this week with the PSA team. We do have weeks on the schedule blocked out to start doing train the trainers in English and in Spanish, and to start offering some new trainings. The issue is we're trying to balance that with our efforts in V2. As soon as we know what's where, we will publish all those dates and we will share all those dates with you. Do we plan to do FSMA 204 training? That's a loaded gun. I think if you ask the team, or loaded question, God, not a loaded gun, holy cow. If you ask the team if we should do it, they would all tell you yes, because people are asking us questions about this all the time. And we have done some work in this area before. And so it's possible we will dip our toe into this, especially in regard to some other projects we have, not necessarily PSA funded projects. So I want to talk about that overlap. We talked about future funding. I can't tell you what's going to happen. What I can tell you is that we are busting our butts to reach out to Congress, to talk to people who are in appropriations, to reach out to people who have control over what goes in Farm Bill, to try and get ourselves funded. I don't know. I would be very sad if we went away, but I think that is a possibility we have to live with. We don't have to live with it immediately, but it is something that we will have to traverse as we move forward. Next slide. This is our new team map, which I love. Thanks to Bia, our new person. It's a great map. You can see everybody, just really good job. I do like it. The one thing I do want to say is what a fabulous group this PSA team is. You've heard from all of them today, and I really do appreciate them staying the course through really difficult times. They didn't find out they were going to be funded again until the middle of June, and their contracts all ran out at the end of June. So I think it takes a lot of faith to hang in there when things get lean. So I do want to thank them all and say how much I appreciate all their efforts. I do want to say that Donna wanted me to say hello to you all. She got pulled away at the last minute for something she is doing related to trying to keep us funding. So she is spending her day in DC, and she sends her best to everyone, and she's sad she couldn't be here. Next slide. I want to thank all of you for your time today. There is a real need for your talents, and I will tell you that only increases every day. If you look at surveys, if you look at evaluations, growers need technical assistance. They are expecting you all to provide that and to support them. So I do want to thank you for showing up, for staying updated, for paying attention, because again, all people are important in moving produce safety forward. Coordinating and collaborating is key. We cannot tell you how much we appreciate your efforts to make this happen. All the discussion about how do we get this information to growers, that makes us all very, very happy. The team is always interested in your feedback. Your input changes policies and our actions. You have no idea how true that is. The team can tell you it can be frustrating at times to navigate, but I want to encourage you to not be afraid to bring up tough topics. If something is bothering you, if something doesn't seem right, if something isn't working, let us know. We can only fix the problems we know about. Honest dialogue is the key to this improvement, and we will share with you. If you tell us something and we can't fix it, we'll tell you that. If we can fix it, we'll tell you that. We will be transparent as we move through the process trying to do that. I love all the questions today. We will work on a unified certificate. We will work on how to gather your input of training people. So all I can tell you is keep it coming. We really, really appreciate everything you guys bring to this. Next slide, Tommy. Here's the PSA website, again, in English and Spanish, and what an effort that is. I mentioned Bia, I probably should have highlighted her. Rob Way, who is always our fearless, go to it, get everything done in the database and the website. He is on phased retirement, and so we have brought in Bia Alvarez, and so she's trying to pick up some of the slack as we keep Rob over busy. Next slide. You can follow us on social media, and we've really been trying to get that done. The annual update in Spanish is November 12th. That gives our SLEAs a couple of weeks to get everything translated, and they're going to do this again in Spanish. We'll all be there to support them. Donna picked October 28th of next year for our next annual meeting in English. There is a survey, so please do use this QR code and answer the 3-question evaluation. Again, we're always gathering updates and information from you all. So with that, I went over a minute. I'm happy to sit here if there's any other questions. I know Laura has put the resources in this chat box several times, so thank you for doing that. And anything else, let us know. Thanks for all the thanks, and again for the support of the team. And stop talking, and we can see what happens here. Okay, team, it's looking like just thanks. And it's not
There
looking
was a
like anything else.
request for the eval link to be put in the, if we have a
Oh.
raw link
Yeah.
to put in the chat as well.
I have it, but it's going to get
Oh,
over.
there it is. Mariana got it in
just
there.
did.
Okay.
Mariana just put it in there.
Woo, woo.
Yep. You just might have to do some scrolling. It's gonna be trumped by some thank yous probably.
So did
remember.
All
Rob.
right.
I'll
Thank
put
you.
it in again.
Robin, Mariana, we'll put it in
Wow.
again. All right. Sorry, team. Did anybody else have anything they wanted to add before we go? No, y'all did a great job.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.